On this episode of AV Week, leveraging hybrid systems that were put in post-COVID, Nvidia announces a significant security flaw in one of their chipsets, and D&B purchases a UK distributor. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 507, recorded Friday, May 7th, 2021. Competing Factions.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
and by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions, and by FSR.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albury. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, one of the gentlemen that I go to when I need questions answered. His name is Brock McGinnis. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Tim. Great to be here.
Also, from way across the pond is my buddy, Mr. Jason Ward. Welcome, sir.
Great to be back. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for hanging out with us on what is for you, Friday evening. But at some point, there will be a pint in your future, and I appreciate that. So thanks so much. And first-time guest, but I have known Tammy for a long time now, Tammy Fuquay from Control Concepts and our buddies over at Street Greenblatt. So welcome, ma'am.
Hi, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Actually, I met Tammy about a year ago. She was a part of our Learn From Home segment where Brandy Alvarado and Corey Schaefer and the ladies at the Avixa Women's Council took over one of our sessions one night, and I met Tammy through those folks. So I'm very nice to meet you, and good to have you on.
You also got me a job that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Our friends over at AV Network and SCN, German audio technology and solutions company, D&B Solutions has purchased the SFL group out of the UK. Now, what that means is SFL, if you're not familiar with them, they are the distributor for D&B inside the UK. This is in line with a couple of other interesting moves from the manufacturing side over the last 3 or 4 years. Probably about 3 years ago now, maybe 2, Ricoh, which some of you may or may not realize Ricoh is getting more and more into the AV industry. They purchased an integrator in Germany called DataVision. They launched that, and then they've actually got a number of remote monitoring contracts in and around Europe. So we've got manufacturers moving more and more closer and closer to the end user and to technology managers, and sort of competing somewhat with integration firms, or in this case, distributors. Brock, let's start with you on this. What does it do to an infrastructure? What does it do to a market when manufacturers start getting closer and closer to the finished product and to the final customer?
Well, as integrators, we've always hated the idea that manufacturers would sell direct to our customers, because how the heck do you compete with your manufacturer? And it really surprises me, because the UK is a huge market for live sound. Probably not over the course of the past year, but there will be a bunch of pent-up demand, as well as for touring sound. And D&B is very good at both of those. And now it would appear there's only one place in the entire country to go and buy it. Because if I'm an integrator in the UK, why would I sell D&B potentially in competition with my manufacturer? I think it's crazy, and I don't know what's behind it.
All right, Jason, same kind of question here. You are in the UK. You look at this from a standpoint of sort of, eventually competing with, manufacturers or, their distributor partners. What does this do when you start looking at, whether it's designs or it's your relationship with those manufacturers?
I think just to begin with, Tim, the D&B play doesn't affect what I do on a day-to-day basis. But relate that, I don't think it's a new problem. If you're honest with yourself and look at your competitor list, So if I was honest with myself and looked at my competitor list, I'd name Cisco as a competitor, even though I'm a Cisco partner, right? Because their guys go out in the field, talk to the clients directly, and will sell against you in opportunities that you're in with their gold partners. So it doesn't feel like a new thing to me. But when you muddy the water, your trust breaks down, right? We're coming back to some of Brock's comments. There's going to be a big trust issue off the back of this, isn't there?
Well, there is, and it also, that there is that potential for, you mentioned Cisco. There are some manufacturers here in the States that have programs where they don't sell directly necessarily to large enterprise, but they do certainly call on them, right? And from the manufacturers, what the manufacturers would say is they're simply driving demand. They're creating demand. And the same thing has happened and existed in higher education, as well as in government, right? Where you have business development representatives that will go out and they'll meet with Fortune 100, they'll meet with Notre Dame, they'll meet with USC, to drive demand, not necessarily selling directly to them. So that's the distinction here. But certainly, creating those relationships and hopefully, again, for you guys' point of view, driving that pull. Does that cross a line to you then, or is that more? Is it more the actual selling and getting a PO from a customer?
No, I was just going to say, in my experience with manufacturers and working the channel, I've always been an end user rep, but you're building that trust when you're taking that one layer away of the integrator or the reseller. Now you're kind of losing the trust of the channel. I mean, there's now, one less opportunity for quoting or one less opportunity to look into other sales routes. But I've just noticed that it's important to develop that relationship, and now you're kind of undercutting that relationship by going direct. But it's certainly a model that you could use, but I've always been used to kind of the channel model.
Well, there's another issue that we haven't brought up is that is this the beginning of a very slippery slope? So let's say that a distributor adds 20% to the cost of something. And let's say that a reseller adds another 20% to the cost of something. Does D&B now able to come to market and they're selling against, Nexo, Meyer, L-Acoustic, are they now able to come to the market at 40% less than competing brands because this is factory direct to the customer? And that scares the living daylights out of me. Because that takes the entire food chain and shortens it, right? It's factory and it's customer. Traditionally, manufacturers have wanted a channel or a food chain because they have access to so many more customers and so many more relationships and feet on the street and ears in the ground and all those kinds of things. But maybe this just comes down to money. And they're saying, why are we paying these people when we do all the work anyway? It might not be the first German company to think that way. But it's challenging for the market.
I was just thinking, Tim, just ask the guys at Neat what they think of the channel.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Need, I'm not going to get into that, but go ahead and look them up and kind of what they're doing. I don't know, guys. I look at residential, and to me, residential, and I know enough to be dangerous about that, and everything I've learned was from Matt and the folks on the CEDIA side. That to me feels like more of a ready-made, direct-to-consumer market, and they still haven't done it, right? I mean, yeah, you can put Amazon in there, and you can put, Ring and Google and stuff in there, but you've still got companies that 100% depend on the channel. 100% depend on the smarts of the dealers. There might be some folks like D&B that are trying it, or like Rico that are trying it, but I'm not 100% sold on the vast majority of the folks that'll be at Infocom in October getting rid of the channel. I don't know. I could be wrong. All right. Next story comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. Harvard Business School has spent, quote unquote, millions on hybrid learning from the The article, quote unquote, the hybrid learning, hybrid classrooms and the return to campus, which we did in a very forward-looking way, required tens of millions of dollars in investments in technology and making the campus safe for the community. The dean of Harvard Business Schools says. Jason, start with you on this. They're not alone, right? You've got customers. You all got customers of both in higher education as well as in Fortune 500 companies, corporations, that have spent tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, putting in hybrid systems, both hybrid work and hybrid education, in the last 12 to 13 months. What's the best way for them to turn around and utilize that investment going forward as we all kind of return back to work, return back to classes, and how are they going to be able to utilize that investment?
Hybrid. I'm I'm sick of that term, hybrid. It's come out of some marketing genius somewhere, and for me, it feels like it's going to the same boggy swamp that the telepresence term went to. A hybrid classroom is no different than a remote learning classroom, right? But somebody's given it a new shiny name to make a book, right? So I'm just, marketing people and their hybrid term is just right up to there with it at the minute. It's remote learning, right? And remote learning platforms are, I don't sell into the education market much, but surely that's the way that's what they need to be doing. Record, remote, record and store. Joe Way says it a lot more eloquently than me, but there is no hybrid, in my opinion. I'm sorry, there is no hybrid.
And don't tell Joe Way that he says anything more eloquently than you. Just my 2 cents. Tammy, same kind of question is when you're dealing with folks. Obviously, Control Concepts works a lot with higher education, whether it's the higher ed market or it is corporate. Folks are going to have to be able to leverage that investment. Because it's not, Jason's right. Hybrid is distance learning from 20 years ago, right? It's, I'm not even going to say what it was, but we had 2 ginormous JVC CRTs in several classrooms when I was, a tech manager in an ISDN line to remote parts of our school's geographic region. But it's the kind of same thing. But this is now, this was put on by necessity. Because teachers still needed to educate. Mm-hmm. There was, a sizable investment. How do they best, not recoup those costs, but repurpose the systems and the infrastructure that they put in place?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think we're going back strictly to in-person learning anytime soon. So a lot of this equipment can still be used for what we're talking about, the hybrid model. But when it does start to go back more in person, a lot of that equipment can be repurposed into different spaces on campus or within a company, maybe in huddle spaces where maybe students still are not able to be in a confined space. Maybe they'll still be able to use some of that equipment there. But I thought what was interesting about this particular story was that I felt like there was a lot of focus on how much they spent, but really what I focused on was how happy the customer was at the end of the process. They were just so thrilled with what the outcome was. And I think that still could be, if it's that kind of school, which was Harvard, they're going to be looking into other ways that they could repurpose some of that equipment. They're not going to just let it go to waste. So, but yeah, I think that we're going to be continuing to evolve even when we come back into these spaces.
All right, Brock, you'll have the last word on this one. How do you kind of walk your client through this and assess not only where they are now and what those systems are being used for currently, but also what they could possibly use for in the next 6 months to a year?
Well, what I know for sure, Tim, is that you give me tens of millions of dollars, I will make you very happy.
Definitely.
Jason, I disagree. So hybrid, to me, is not a marketing term. It might not be the perfect word, But this is this combination of people who are present in the flesh, in a classroom or in a meeting room, and people who are distant and working remotely or from another location. And as you mentioned in recording, the third type of participant is the future participant, somebody who might want to access the content of that meeting or that class at some point in future. This equipment is not only not going away, it does not have to be repurposed. It is actually going to accelerate. I believe that every university and every workplace is going to work in some combination of in-person and remote, whatever you want to call it, Jason, forever, and certainly for the foreseeable future. And for an educational institution like Harvard, this is a no-brainer. So Queen's University here in Canada has a distance learning MBA program. It is a remote MBA program. And they have had sophisticated recording equipment for a long time, as well as sophisticated workflow, because the content of the lectures is the intellectual property of the professors or the instructors that are delivering it. Harvard can triple the size of its business school simply because there's no longer a limitation on the number of seats that are available in each class. They can shift time zones because people in Hong Kong no longer have to move from Hong Kong to the Harvard neighborhood to attend the Harvard School of Business. They could attend exactly those same classes remotely, and they may be time shifted, and maybe some of the instructors or the teaching assistants would time shift as well to adjust for it. So there is no loss for sure of the investment that they've made, and people will be making more and more and more of this investment. The world has changed forever. We're not doing everything in person anymore.
I'm going to ask it because I've heard that exact same argument, Brock, and I've heard it from a couple of folks going back and forth, and it might be something where I might offer it up to our buddy Mr. Chris Netto for AV in the AM, the conversation he does on Sunday mornings on Twitter. Does that diminish the elusiveness or the exclusivity of a quote-unquote Harvard degree or a quote-unquote Yale or Princeton or these prestigious schools that not only do you have to be the best of the best, it goes back to Jason's market speak, right? The best of the best to get in, but you have to make the sacrifice to go there physically, right? And dedicate, whether it's a MBA or it's a PhD from Harvard. Does that diminish that kind of pedigree?
Not if you've got the knowledge.
I don't think so. I'm in a master's program right now, and I feel like I'm learning just as much distance learning as I am in person. It's still hard. I still have to do all the work. I'm just not there physically.
And if you want marketing crap, Jason, look at the branding of the universities. So they teach you the same mathematical formulas at Harvard as they do at the community college down the street. One of them charges $150,000 a year, and the other one pays you $15,000 a year to attend. The quality of education depends on the quality of the instructor and the quality of the student, but the difference is not extraordinary. And I think a distance degree from Harvard would probably be equally well respected, only because the person judging that will know that it cost a lot more than from the University of Albuquerque's extension program, right? It's it's marketing, Tim.
And it doesn't say on the degree that it is a distance learning. Oh,
probably not. No. It's still an MBA, right? It's still a if that continues to be important.
Oh, I think it will. And I was talking to my daughter the other day, and we were discussing about what she wants to be when she grows up, and she's just now turned 15, and so those conversations are getting a little more serious now. And she was discussing about being a teacher, and she wants to go into education. And I'm like, okay, that's great. You are going to be going to college until you're 23, 24 with your master's, because by the time she gets out of school, I honestly believe it's becoming increasingly more. The bachelor's degree is becoming as common as the high school diploma was when my parents graduated high school, right? And so now the bachelor, the next step is making sure that you differentiate yourself with that master's degree of some sort. So, all right, last story here comes to it. Actually, this may be the second or third time we've done this, from threatpost.com. Nvidia has unveiled a slight issue with one of their graphics accelerators. There's 5 display driver security bugs. I'm going to have Mitchell put a link to it, because I'm not going to read off the actual bugs, nor am I going to read off the drivers that they impact. However, the reason I'm bringing this up, and Tammy, we're going to start with you on this, the NVIDIA drivers and the NVIDIA GPUs are used in a number of AV devices. So this goes back to security and AV security. Tammy's not only worked, obviously, with Control Concepts, but also with a number of manufacturers. When we start talking about security, when we start talking about releasing and communicating with the clients some of these security issues with products that aren't necessarily yours, right? So if I'm not even going to pick on anybody here, but XYZ manufacturer, but you're using a chipset from company B, and they're the issue. How do you communicate that best to the clients while also making them understand that it's not you, it's this thing we used over here, right? But they still need to be aware of it.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I know I was working with a manufacturer that had some problems, and your customers don't want to hear the excuses. They just want to know how you're going to fix it. So I think that's the key, is really being in constant communication with the customer to let them know what's happening and not pushing blame around. And then also giving them a time frame of when it's going to be resolved is probably the biggest thing, if you have it. Sometimes you don't have it either. Maybe it's still being worked out, all those bugs. But it's important to just be in constant communication with the customer, for sure. And nowadays, everything is cybersecurity is a huge issue. I mean, at Control Concepts, so we do a lot with residential, and I hear a lot about how all these new things that are being attached to your network at home could be easily accessed. That's a big deal too. So I feel like even if it's not your specific problem, your customer bought your product, so they don't know that it's the other person's problem. They just want to know how you're going to fix it. So.
Yeah. Brock, a number of years ago, Barcode ClickShare was the back-end engine for a number of wireless display products throughout the industry, right? So they were the engine. Similar situation here, where there became a security flaw, a security vulnerability. And so not only did Barco have to say, hey, by the way, there's this thing, all of these other manufacturers had to do the same thing, right? Now, I say a number of years ago, that has since been fixed. A number of manufacturers actually were in the process of already not using Barco, but the same situation here. To Tammy's point, how do you make sure that the client is taken care of, but also that you communicate the kind of the fixed solution to this issue?
I think Tammy really hit the nail on the head. This is about communication, and if any of our regular manufacturers are incorporating NVIDIA chips that have a security problem, I wanted to know about it yesterday, because I have clients who have purchased those products, and I need to inform them. And they have no way of knowing that the product they bought from me and that I bought from who knows actually has that chip in it. And in fact, that was the first reaction I had when I read the article. It's like, oh my gosh, it says some AV manufacturers, please tell me which ones. So there has to be an awful lot of communication that needs to happen down the road. Problems happen; they're inevitable in technology. It's not anymore about who's going to have problems, because we're all going to have problems. Everybody's going to have a problem. let's just talk about it and get it out in the open. And that allows us and our customers customers to protect themselves.
Absolutely. Jason, what's the best way to communicate this to your clients once you find out? Like Brock said, let me know yesterday, but how do you go about, disseminating that information to your customer base?
Everything Brock and Tammy said is absolutely spot on. I think that the first thing for me is when you read the article, it's vulnerability, 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 vulnerability. It feels like I need a grading system on how vulnerable am I here. Because every one of these is vulnerability followed by quite a lot of tech speak. So it's like, well, what's the actual problem? How often does a tech guy come up to you and say, "Oh, there's a problem here," and I'm like, "I don't know. Can you break that down into Brummie or something for me, where I can understand what the real vulnerability is?" So communicate it, but communicate it properly, right? Communicate it to the level of there's a vulnerability here, but don't wet yourself. We can solve this really quickly because when the Crestron vulnerability hit a couple of years ago, the market lost its head. And it was something that seemed to go away relatively quickly. So I like people to talk to me at a level that I can understand what's going on. When I read this article, I don't understand the vulnerability. That's the point of the communication here. Is like, so how vulnerable am I? Do I even have one of these? How vulnerable am I? The second point, I suppose, Tim, as the security guys like Frank and Mark and all the other guys say, in all honesty, if you did a little straw poll of all the AV integrators, especially the smaller ones, who even knows about this to act on it? Like Brock said, I want to know about this yesterday, but who even knows? Does the right person in every organization know about this to act on it? It's a problem in AV. So my second part is that's an industry problem. My first part is me, Jason. How do I deal with this? Because I can't understand what I'm reading. I know we've got guys that are employed by us that can understand what they're reading, but they may sort of downplay the seriousness of this and sort of go, "Oh, it's okay." You got to break this down that a senior person can act on it, right?
I think it comes down to also making sure that your manufacturers are communicating this in a way that you can understand, right? And that you can communicate to your folks, because you're right. I mean, most integrators will have somebody on their staff, whether that's the IT department or whoever, that can understand the severity of this. But can they make the connection between that and something you may have sold last year? So who knows? All right, folks, that will do it for us. Thank you all so much. Mr. Brock McGinnis, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brock McGinnis. I'm there quite often, sometimes getting myself in trouble, as I did this past week. Maybe a few too many opinions. And business-wise, you can find me on LinkedIn or Brock at nationwideav.com.
All right, very good. Mr. Ward, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Ditto everything Brock said there, getting into trouble, too many opinions, at JP Ward on Twitter and Jason Ward Involve on LinkedIn. They're the best places to find me. And I'll try and be nicer for the next month or two.
Nah, why would you? And you also check out Jason's podcast, AV Jam, as well.
AV Jam UK. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I will point out that I think I've only been on once. So
I was only thinking that before.
Yeah,
today.
they didn't have to back either.
I'm just saying. I just once.
It's a great pat on the back there.
Yeah. Tammy Fuquay, thank you so much. How do people connect with you?
You can connect with me on Twitter, Tammy Fuquay3, and on LinkedIn, or you can email me at tammyf@controlconcepts.net. And if you're going to be in the Vegas area next week, I'll be at Calvo, so stop by and say hello. I'll be doing a panel discussion there.
Yeah, that happens on the 13th of May. If you're listening to us the first couple of days of the week, you can check out Tammy. You can check out our buddy Mark Coxon. You can check out Joe Way, a number of folks that are going to what, in essence, is basically the first AV trade show in the last 18 months or so. So 18 months. 12, 13 months at least.
Got that.
I have a question, though. Tammy, was Tammy Fuquay 1 and 2 already taken on Twitter?
I guess so. I was so original. I just put in Tammy Fuquay and they gave me a 3 at the end, so I just left it. So apparently so.
So
they can't be as awesome as me, though.
No, no, for sure. And I'm
And so
jealous
modest
of
as well.
you. I'm jealous of you going to Vegas and participating in a live panel discussion. I hope attendance is fantastic. I think the organizers of that show have been very adept, but also courageous in doing this. People really want to get together, and I think it's going to do really well. And I wish Mike and team all the best.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful and prayerful that Brock will be somewhere in my vicinity sometime in the next 6 months, at least. Although in talking to him and our buddy Matt Scott, we'll see what we can do for the Canadian government, and so we'll absolutely see. So, all right, for me, don't follow me on the Twitters. Because I'm still crying over the Blues. But go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others, including our buddy Matt Scott's program called AVWeek. He looks at the residential side of the AV industry. We mentioned some M&As. Matt will be actually talking with some folks from Access Networks and Snap AV, because our buddy Guy Feiner and his incredible team have agreed to a purchase for Snap AV. So, and Snap has made some interesting forays into the networking side of the industry. From my count, I want to say this is the third networking company that they have purchased in the last 3 to 4 years. So that's a big deal. And so Matt will be talking to them as well as some other folks on his show coming up this next week. So also check out one of our new programs called AV Spotlight. We take a look at the technology managers of the industry. So check all that out and more. Also check out our sponsors help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and all the others. So all that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.